Yeah, yeah. So as I was saying there, what do we want to do? We have these four inputs. We want to create this OTP functionality that you used to see online. And all this in cheap stuff that come with all these concepts that I've been explaining since, which is this you transversing the DOM. That means you are moving from one element to another one, and we want to use it here because we want to use this functionality of these siblings here. Because these four buttons these four inputs are together based on our HTML arrangement that we have here. So, and since they are together, from one input, we can move into another input. And you know how OTP work online, because that's the first thing you need to know. Whatever stuff you want to do, you need to know what you are trying to solve. Then after you know what you are trying to solve, then you now put JavaScript into your code to do all this necessary stuff for you, because JavaScript doesn't know what to do. You have to be the one that will tell it what to do and how to do it. And how do you go about it? What we want to do here is that once you type a value in the first box, this stuff is supposed to move into the next box automatically. Not that the user will now come to this the second one to type. User can actually do it, it will work, but that's a bad user experience there. As they're typing from one box, they're supposed to move into the next one automatically. Not that the user will be the one that will do this in there. And again, too, once you press backspace, instead of it still staying inside this box, it's supposed to go back into this previous one like that. And that's how OTP work online. But how do you build this simple stuff? It's something you can just do with your normal JavaScript without any framework, because you have the power to do all this thing by using your events along with this transfer the DOM to kind of connect all the elements together without you selecting all of them like that. Because here now, once you type anything inside this box, you know that we're going to get the element through the event, because any event that occur, the element that trigger that event will always be this event or target. And on it here, we are accessing the value because we are dealing with input. And since we are listening for this input event, you know what is going to occur. Is going to fire this input event, and on the input event, you are going to have the data. So the data will be whatever you type. If it is a normal key on the keyboard, but if it is backspace, that's where we are getting this null. And if you look at it, another thing that I said we're going to be using here is this input type for us to determine whether to move to the user to the next one or to the previous one there. So let's start from the basic one. What do we want to do? The first thing we want to do here is that once the user enter the box and they type, we want to move the user to the next box. So how do we get this current box, and how do we get the next box that follows it? Don't forget, we have a next element sibling. But if it is the previous one you want to get, no, that's the previous element sibling. But currently here, let's deal with the forward one. Then later on, we're going to deal with the backward one. So yeah, now what do we want to do? How do I get the element? So I know that my current element, which I can just call it current element like this for reading sake. So let me save it in a variable. And this one is going to be this event dot target, because that's our current element. But now I want to move to the next element that follows it. How do I get this next element? That's what we talked about like yesterday, by using these siblings here. So we have the previous one and we have the next. And the one we want to use here is just this next one here. So we already have our element. So the next thing we just need to do here is this current element, then dot next element sibling. And this next element sibling here, or this next element sibling here, will give you the next element that is after this current one that you click on. So if you're on the second one, the next one is going to be third one. If you're on the third one, the next one is going to be this. But if you're on this one now, the next one is nothing. And that's the reason why I mentioned at that time that you are going to have error later on when you get to the next one. But for now, let me just quickly put this one here. But how do we focus on the next element? So how do we focus on the next element? All the inputs actually have this functionality that you can use to focus on them. So they have all inputs have this functionality, or what do I mean by functionality? I'm talking about a method to focus on the input. You can actually focus on the input programmatically there without the user going there to click on. This is what we call focus. And once you leave the box, this is what we call blur. So blur means that you are leaving the box while Focus means you are entering the box, you are focusing on that particular box, and as you can see, it's blinking, so the box is focused. And once I leave, the second one is not focused again, is now the third one. But this second one now is going to fire an event which is blur or there, but we don't need all this event for now. The only thing we want to do here is to focus the input programmatically, not the user will be the one that will have to do it. And how do you do that? Don't forget, this next element sibling will give us the next element that follows the current one, and on it there is something known as focus there. So, and this focus is a functionality that you can use on inputs. So they are there on input that you can use to programmatically focus on the element there. And since we are dealing with input, so the first time this is going to be the first one, and the next element is going to be this, and we are now focusing on that element. So which means the code or our focus will be removed from this first one, and it will go to the next one automatically. And if I type 4 now, can you see now it moves to the second one automatically. If I type inside this one too, it will move to the third one. If I type inside this one, it will move to the third one. But this is where the problem is not going to come in now. Don't forget, this last one now, there is no next because no element that follows it there. So if you look at it from the HTML part, this is our first one. So his own next element is going to be this. So from the second one too, his own next is going to be this. The third one now, did you see anything? No. So nothing follows it, so no next sibling. So if I try to type now, this is going to generate error. As you can see, this is the error here because we are trying to access the next element, and on the next element we are calling focus. But this next element is going to be null for this last one, and since it's null, there's no way you'll be calling focus on it. It will not work. But we are going to see how we can handle this error later on there. So look at how we're able to solve this simple stuff by just using what we learned yesterday, which is this transversing the DOM, which is a way of you moving from one element into another element. And as you know, you can move from parent to a child, a specific child, or to the children there, or you can move from the child to the parent. And at the same time, you can move from one sibling to another sibling there. And we talked about different one like this parent element dot first element child, which is going to give you the first one that is inside that parent. The last one, the last element child, which is to give you the last element that is inside that parent. But you know, if there are more than two and you need to get anyone in between the first and the last, you know, you have to use children followed by the index of that particular one you are looking for there. So which is this one on this line 318 that we talk about. And again, we have the sibling, which is what we are currently using here now to do this OTP stuff that you normally see online. So you type in a box and it will move to the next box automatically. What did we use here? From the current one, because we don't, at that moment that the user is typing, there's no way you know that this is the current one that the user is typing on. You can actually get it, but how do you move to the next one that follows it? We are using this concept of transversing the DOM now to be able to determine the element that follows that particular one that we are currently working on. So how do you get the current one that the user is working on the event or target? That's the element that triggered the event. And you know that any element that triggered the event here now is the one that we are currently working on. So if I'm here and I type anything, this is the element that triggered this event element, which is what we are saving inside this current element. And after we get the element here, we are moving to its next one. So which means this one will give us the next element that follows the current one. And on that one here, we are now calling this method here, which is focus. Because a focus here, this focus here is what you can use on the input to programmatically focus on any input. Once you have the element, which is the input, just call the focus on it, and it will focus on that input automatically, which is something you can do in a lot of different places here. Maybe you have a button to search and you click on that search, it will just take you to the box. You can use this functionality here like that to quickly take a user to a particular box. And we are using this focus, which you are going to see a lot of other stuff that you can use on all these elements. This focus, you'll be using it with all this input or anything that deal with forms. That's where you'll be using this one. But now, how do we solve the problem of the backward one? Because here, if I click on this box, as you can see, it's still trying to go forward. Like if I click this one, it's not supposed to go forward. It's supposed to go backward, not going forward. When you clear whatever that is inside, if you type, it will go forward. But if you press the backspace, then it's supposed to go backward. How do we know that the user click backspace on their keyboard, or they are typing other key. So when you open this your event, because event is the one that hold the event that occur, and on this event that occurred here, it have a lot of information. But for this input event, don't forget I said the data is the one that hold the current stuff that you type from your keyboard. If it is not backspace, if it is backspace, what you get is null, like that. And another thing that is very important here is this input type that we want to use now. But this is one we are going to use to determine whether the user actually deletes a content or they insert a text. So if you type something here, the input type under this event here, it is going to be insert text. And once you have this one, you should know that user actually input something, so you should go forward. But if you go back there and you clean by using backspace, you see that the input type will be different now. It will now be this delete content. Let me reduce this thing because it's more than that. So delete content backward. So it's going to be delete content backward. Then here now, we can now use our condition now to check whether it is the delete content backward or it is this insert text. So if it is insert text, you know that we need to get the next element sibling. But if it is delete content backward, we need to get previous element sibling. And we don't need to worry about whether we're on the second one or we're on the first one or third one. Because of this previous and next, they always work based on the current element you are working on. So you don't need to be doing a lot of work yourself by saying whether the user is on the first one, or the second one, or the third one, or the fourth one, and so forth like that. You don't need to do all this work, because the previous, if you're on the third one, the previous is going to be this, while the next is going to be this. But if you are on the second one now, the previous is going to be this, and the next one is going to be this. So this thing is always changing based on the current element. And as you can see now, this thing, we're able to solve this problem easily with the help of this transversing the DOM. Like, we can move from one element into another element based on their relation there on the page. So let's put this in practice. So we need to do a lot of checking. We don't even to do a lot of checking, just simple checking here. So we need to get our course input type, because I need to get the input type that occurs. So on this event, don't forget the objects that will be the key of the object you have, the value that we're looking for is this input type. So on it, we just get this input type. So we need to check the type of the input type that occurs. So if input type is the same thing as insert text, does know that the user type a valid data inside the box. Later on, we are still going to condition them. Like, we don't want them to type letter, we only want them to type number. So we're going to do that one too later. But for now, let's start from this place. I hope you are following. So if it is insert text, I can't hear you. I hope you are following. Hello. Hello.
Now my network dey do nonsense. Make I go outside first.
I said we have this input type on line 349. I've already gotten the input type. So I'm creating the input type, which is coming from this event.input type. In order for me to determine whether the user are deleting the content from the box or they are inserting a text inside the box. So if the input type is insert text, because I showed you here that the input type is going to be insert if you type something inside the box, and if you clear the box, if you clear something from the box, that means you press your backspace or you delete the content inside the box, it's going to have this input type of input delete content backward. And that's what I'm checking here. So I'm checking if the input type is inside text. So if it is inside text, we know that the user type a content inside the box. We need to move to the next the next input. But if input type is the same thing as delete content backward, like this, backward, so we already know that the user deletes from the box. So since they deleted from the box, we need to take them to the previous element. So instead of taking them to the next, because currently what we have is that if you type something, you take it to the front. If you still delete, it will still take you to the next one. But that's what we want to do here is that if you insert into the box, we want to take to the next one. But if you delete from the box, we want to take it to the previous one. And how do you know that the user deletes from the box or they actually type something from the box? So the event that we're listening for, which is this input, it actually has this input type that you can use to determine whether the user deletes something or they insert something there. So if they delete something, the text that you're going to see under the input type is going to be this delete content backward here. And if they insert something, what you are going to see there inside the input is this insert text. And that's what I'm now using here on line 351 to this line 357. So on line 351, we have if the input type is insert, we know that we are moving to the next box. But if it is delete content backward, we know that we are going back to the previous one. So here now, instead of next, supposed to be previous element sibling like this. And if I save the code, let me reduce the screen so that it can show properly. So if I reduce the screen, let me reduce this console log and let me expand this one so that I can increase the screen a little bit. Yeah, so now our this thing should work. So if I type 4, can you see it will go to the next one, and if I delete, it's supposed to go back to the previous element there, and I'm not seeing anything because I've not really typed anything before, so it will not go back because I'm pressing backspace. I don't have anything before, so it's not going back. But now if I type and go back to type 6 here and type 1, so since I already have the content inside this box, and if I press 1, can you see now it go back to the previous one, which is that 6. If I clean this 6 too, you see that it go back to that 4, and if I clean this 4, it will go back to the first one. So if I type something again, it will go to the next one. If you type, it will go to the next one. If you clear what is inside that box, it will go back to the previous one. That's what this delete content backward is looking for. So if you delete something from the box, like if you delete something from the box, it will go back to the previous input. But if you insert something inside the box, it will go to the next input. But this one is not bulletproof OTP right now because I can actually type anything I want. I can type 2 letters. Yeah, you know that OTP, each box should only have one character. Each box should only have one character. And again, you can add all this logic into your OTP by adding the logic to check whether the current box you are typing in, the content that is there is more than one or is just one item that is there. So if it is one item, nothing will happen. But if it's more than one item, then you only make sure that it is one that you accept from them. And you can do all this thing easily by using a lot of things that we've talked about there, because this thing, the one I just mentioned, you can actually use this same current element because that's the current element. Before you move to the next one, you want to check whether it's having multiple value or not. And how do you check? We need to get the total length of the current value that is inside it. So what is total length of the value that's inside it? You can actually get a value, which is going to be this current element then dot value. Don't forget, value is what you'll be using to access whatever value that is under your input there. So if I console log it out, you are going to see that we are getting the current value, the entire stuff that the user typed there inside the box. So if it is 47, you see the 47 in the console. If it is 4, you are going to see the 4 or the console there. So if I increase the console and if I type 5 here, you see that we are getting 5. Again, if I go back to that box and type 7, you see that we are getting 57. But this is not what we want. We don't want to use that to type 2 things inside a box. It must always be one item inside a box. And how do you do that? We can get the length of what they type. Because on a string, you can actually get the length of whatever that is inside that string. For example, here now, if I type Warisola here, if I type Warisola, and if I use dot length, it will give you the total number of items that is inside that string. So we can now use this thing now on the value because we know that this thing that is coming back is a string. So we can now use it to check whether the length is equal to 1. If the length is not greater than 1, then we want to reduce it to 1. It must not be more than 1. So how do you do that? So what we can do here is just to check. So if like this, so value dot length, because I know that this one is going to give you the total number of the character that you have or the text that you have inside the box. If it is greater than 1, I know that something is wrong, which means they now have something like 57, 82, whatever stuff. We really want to add. So if it is more than that, what do we want to do? We want to do this. Our current element then dot value should always be the last one that they type. So whatever the last element that the user type here should always be what is with there. Like if you type 5 before, so for example, I click this one now, what is there before is 5. So if I press 8 now, what's supposed to be there is 8. It should be removed. This 5 should be removed. So the 5 should be removed. So how do you do that? This one too is still JavaScript stuff, which is how you work with string, because there's a lot of functionality that you can do with the string. So for example, here now, imagine I have this const name should be this Warisola like this. So I have this Warisola. So if I call the name, you see that it's going to give me everything. But what if I only need the first character that is inside that Warisola? You can actually use your index too to access your string. It will give you the value at that index. But this string actually comes with another method that you can use to kind of get a particular text out of the entire text, which is like a substring. So I want to take this word out of Warisola. How do I do that? Or I want to take everything from this Ola to the end. How do you do that? That's where this your string dot we have this what was that? So we have this slice. What's wrong with this thing? So slice is a way, just like a slice of bread. You want to take part of that slice. So here you're going to have the start. Where are you starting from? The index. And we have the end index. But it will never include the end though, if you supply the end. So which means if you want to work with this Warisola now, and you want to take WAR, so which means the starting point is going to be 0, the ending point is going to be this I, because it will never include the last one. So this is going to be 0, 1, 2, 3. So if I want to take word now, what I just need to do is 0, 3 like this. And if I save it, can you see? I was able to extract out word. So if I want to extract out this Wari now and Z all the way to the Waris now. So if I want to take Waris, the starting point is 0. This is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Don't forget, the last one will not be included. So you have to go beyond where you want to stop. Because if you stop at this Z here, which is the Z, here, it will not include it. So this is 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 like that. So here we are going to have the name, then slice from 0 all the way to 5. And if I save it, as you can see, I was able to get what it is. And that's what we are going to be using here too. I want to take the last one that is here, because I know that if the thing is more than 1, it means you are having 2. And how do I get the last one? So here now, if I have 58, how do I get the last number there? I can just quickly use this my index if I want by just using 1 like that. What was this wrong with this one? Let me put it in the variable. X is 58 or 59 like that. So if I use x at 1, as you can see that I'm getting that 9, which is the same thing. I can just use x or slice. What I want to slice from is just from 1 here. If you don't want to, if you want it to get to the end, you don't even need to specify the end like that. So if I want to take Ola now, this is going to be 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So here 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 like that. So here now is going to be name slice. I will just specify 5. If you don't specify the end, it will take up to the last one. So when you don't specify the end, it will take up to the last one. But if you specify the end, it will stop, but not including that index of the last one here. So if the value is more than 1, we know that it is 2 at that moment, because it can never be 3 based on what we are trying to do on this line. It can never be 3. It will always be 2. But when it is now 2, what we want to do is that whatever stuff that is there before, we just want to take that last one there. So we are replacing the entire value by the last one that you type. So which means if I save this code like this, you can never have 2 inputs inside the box again. You can never have 2 inputs. So if I type 4 and if I go back there and if I try to type 8, you see that it replaced that 4 with 8 with this logic here, the line that we have here. What is it doing? We are checking if the length of this thing is greater than 2. But don't forget, what you have to get there is this 48. But because we don't want the user to input 2 text inside the box, what do? we check if the length, because the length will be 2 here now, and since the length is 2, that means it's greater than 1, and since it's greater than 1, it's going to perform what you have there. And what are we doing here? What we are doing is that the value that is on this current element, oh, we are taking the last one there. So if it is 48, if I just have x is 48 like this, so if I now use x at 1, that I will get the last number, and that's what we are doing here. We get the last character that you type, and we set it as the new value of what is inside the box. So which means here now, if I come here and type 1 like this, it will just replace it. But this thing will not work if I move the stuff to the front, and if I type 7, as you can see, it will still be 1. But it only work based on what you type last. So since we are putting it at the front, it's not the front one that's going to take, it's going to take the last one. But if you don't want to do it like this, maybe you still want to solve it, maybe even if they type at the front, it will be using that name value. Don't forget, on this input event that occur, that is the data that you type. This is what I actually type, but because I put it at the front, it's taking 1. But assuming I type it at the end, you see that it will replace it with that name value like that. But if you don't want to be doing this one, what you can do is just to take the current one that you type. That's why in JavaScript, there are different ways of solving a problem. It all depends on which one works best for your application at that moment. So this one now, as you can see, it solves the problem. When you are typing from the back, it works. But when you type from the front of the text, it doesn't work, because it's seen the 4 as the last. It's not seeing that new number that you type. But you can actually use the events dot data like this to represent the stuff like that. And if I save it now, next time now, if I type 4 and if I go back to the back and type 7, it will work. And if I go to the front of 7 and type 2, it will still work. Why is it working? Because the data always have the current value that you type. And what are we now doing? If it is more than 1, just replace everything that is there with the current number that the user typed there like that. And now you just have a simple OTP inputs there. Not that you have a special stuff, it's just bunch of input combined together, and you wire the logic so that everything can work together. And now if I clean this box like that, we've not really taken care of when it's not having any preview or next. That's why it's throwing this error here. We can actually add that one too there. So here, if I type 4, it will move to the next one. If I type 6, 7, if I type 3, if I type the next number, you see that it's just replacing what is there. You can never have 2 inputs at all. You can never have it, because we've already wired the logic that anytime you are working on a current box and you type more than 1 character there, the last character that you type, that's what is going to be there. The previous one will be removed automatically. And if I press backspace here, you see that it's going back to the next one, the previous one. If I press this one too, it go back to the previous one. Click on this one too, it will go back to the previous one. And if I type another number, it will replace the current one or the previous one and move to the next one. But now if I type, it's showing this error here. So here we need to check whether we have this focus or not. And how do you do that? There are different ways of doing this checking there like that, by using knowledge transaction there. But for now, I won't talk about error. I'll be talking about error in the coming class there like that. So we are able to use this lesson 4 here under this the option 4 here under this level 6. Again, in the next class, we're going to see how to work with the element style, the element attribute, and the element class. Most especially this class, because you'll be using it a lot later on. For example, like this box now, we still come back there. Anytime you have something inside the box, you want to change the style to something else. So if you have something inside the box, the style is going to be green. Like maybe the box line will turn to green. But if you don't have anything inside it, it will turn back to another color. How do you change the style of your element? That's what we'll be talking about in the next class, using all these working with element style, working with element attributes, and working with this element class, most especially this class. So we have our CSS ready down, but the only thing we'll be doing from JavaScript is to toggle the class on the element, whether to show the stuff or not, based on whether this thing is having value or whether this length of this thing is greater than 1 or it's equals to 0. When it is 0, it means nothing is inside the box, and when it is 1, it means something is inside the box. Don't forget, we can't have more than 1. We've already taken care of it there. There's no way you're going to, after this line, there's no way you're going to have more than one item inside the box. Is that 0 or 1? Nothing more. You can't have less than 0 and you can't have more than 1. That's what this thing is saying here. There's nothing you want to type here that is going to be 2 items inside the box. You can never type 2 things inside the box. It will always be 1. So whatever stuff you type, if it is having a value before, it will replace it with the new value there. And in the next class, we move with the other one, then continue with this OTP. We are still going to use it. And once we are done with all this thing now, we now combine everything together to work on this our calculator here. You know, we've already had some, oh, I've disabled this stuff. But later on, we'll bring all this thing back and we'll be able to work on this calculator and bringing a lot of other functionality in there that you can use, because everything I lay out there, these are just the basic stuff, but there's a lot of things that you need to use later on. But right now, we are able to build this our minimal OTP input by using all these basic stuff that we talked about, like the event. We talked about how to select the element. We talked about how to get the current element. Again, we talked about how to transverse, which means how to move from one element to another element based on the current element that you are working on. And again, we have different methods that you can use there. We have parents moving into child or the children there, depending on whether you're looking for one or multiple like that, by using any of the method we've talked about. Again, from child, you can get his parent, and at the same time too, from one sibling element, you can get another sibling. And what is sibling? They are elements that are placed side by side. That means they are not inside each other, but they are side by side. So this P here is sibling to this div, and this header 2 is sibling to this P, and this H1 is sibling to header. But now, this div here, it's kind of like a parent, is a parent to all this input here. And from this div, assuming I have this div selected, I can get to any of these input by using the parent to child or children method here. Or I'm on this first input, which is what we use for this OTP stuff. We're on this first input, but we want to move into the next one. And again, if I'm on the second one, I want to move into the third one. If I'm on the third one, I want to move into the fourth one. But I don't really know which one the user is going to be at a particular time. But I know that anytime they're on the second one, it should go to the next one if they input something inside the box, and it should go to the previous one if they kind of clear what is inside the box, which means that you already have something inside the box and you now clear it, then to move to the previous one, which is what we just did now by using this basic JS code that we just have, that is not even up to how many lines here. Everything we have here is just basic stuff that we have here. If I remove all this console log for you to see what is going on there, it's like just basic line, but this basic line requires a lot of JavaScript stuff to be known, because here you must know what is object, you must already know what is function, what is method, what is DOM, what is event listener, how to target element, and a lot of other things that we'll discuss about there. So this is where I'm going to stop today, and going over this thing again. From the first box, we have 1, 2, 3, 4 like this, and as you can see, it's working. It's not perfect because we did not take care a lot of things there, but it's still working. And if I press the backspace now, you see it's going back to the previous one, just like your normal OTP input like that. But we're going to work more than this by changing the style, because right now I don't like this style. We're going to change it. So if you have something inside the box, it's going to change the line now to green, which means that one is filled. And anyone that is not filled, it will just have gray line around it. But how do you switch the class when you are typing inside the box, or when something is going on with the box? We'll be talking about all this one later on by using this option here, which is working with element class. And do the same thing. Again, we have this working with element attributes, which is what you can use to set or remove any attribute, or even check whether the attribute is there. And again too, we have this other way of working with the style of the element from CSS, which is something I don't really like to do, because this one is just like you imagine that you want to do something like this in CSS in JavaScript. So you have to type all this in, and the way you type it in JavaScript quite different from the way you type it in CSS. So I only love this in CSS, but what I will do in there is to switch the class on the element. So we have the class here already, but JavaScript will be switching pass on the element by using this working with the element class. But you can actually do it directly yourself from JavaScript by using this working with the element style. But I won't be using this method. I will explain it, but I won't be using it. I will always work with this because this solution here is always perfect for every problem there. But using the style too will work, but I don't like to use it because kind of it's not that easy to type or to work with when you have a lot of properties or a lot of CSS properties that you need to work with. Typing it from JavaScript is just waste and pain in the neck like that. So, but I'm going to show you what is doing there, but I'll always be working with this last one. So that will be all for today. Any question